You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Guardian columnist Zoe Williams and the former Conservative MP, who's now Chief Executive of the charity Business in the Community, Mary Macleod. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. With the headline, Meltdown, the Mail covers both the impending strikes at Gatwick Airport and the sweltering temperatures in Europe. The Star refers to holidaymakers travelling to the continent in the extreme heat as blowtorch Brits. The Express hears that Just Stop Oil could stage major demonstrations at rush hour in London on Monday. The Eye has an exclusive report on what it calls the toxic levels of lead in school drinking water. The Mirror carries a poll suggesting the majority of those surveyed want to see the BBC newsreader Hugh Edwards back on television. According to The Times, the government could scrap inheritance tax in a bid to win more votes at the next election. The Telegraph has seen government-backed guidance that will be given to parents of children identifying as transgender. The Guardian says there's massive demand for a new gaming addiction clinic here in the UK. And the Financial Times has a story about how American banks are capitalising on interest rate increases. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Zoe Williams and Mary Macleod. Welcome to both of you. Let's start with The Star, not something we often do, I have to say. And their headline there, Blowtorch Brits, talking about British holidaymakers suffering in the heat. Zoe.
It's really interesting because everybody always talks as though British people would struggle most with the heat, which is reasonable because we have least of it. But the truth is, British people are incredibly robust when it comes to being too hot. And there's absolute years of evidence that we'll stay in the sun way longer than any other European nation. So I think it's sort of self-parody, this headline. It's sort of, we are ridiculous. Everybody else is staying indoors. We will still be on the beaches when it's way too hot. The subtext, of course, is that it's way too hot because there's an absolute heat wave in Europe, and this is dovetailing with the climate change stories of last week, that 7 of the hottest days on record happened in 1 week. So, the kind of tabloid determination to stay positive and jolly in the face of trends which are, leading inexorably to the least good scenario that scientists have been predicting for some time, is quite extraordinary.
Yes, it does seem as if they are sort of making light of what you describe, obviously, and it is a very serious story. And Mary, they're saying that Brits are cramming the beaches and defying the warnings that temperatures could hit 49 and getting burnt to a crisp in the process.
Yeah, and that sort of heat is horrendous. I mean, I've once been in Egypt in just about 45-degree heat, and you couldn't move. So I can well imagine probably Brits are the worst at doing this and staying out no matter how hot it is. But I'm someone who burns really easily. I'm just so white skinned, and therefore it's the whole threat of melanoma and cancer and things that just are people should be covering up. They should be putting SPF. And sorry to be so serious about it, but it really is. It threatens life, and so if people can still enjoy it and just be sensible with it, and it's everything in a balanced way, isn't it? Where it's cover up, wear a hat, put sunscreen on, enjoy it and have fun, but just be reasonable, drink lots of water, be hydrated. It's really the way to go, and just enjoy it sometimes in the shade, and you can still have fun. It doesn't need to be on the beach for so long. but take a break. But I'm not surprised at this headline. I think we all know it does happen.
Yeah, so well, that famous phrase, "Only mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the midday sun," seem to be living up to that. But you can have just as much fun in the shade. I often do. Let's move on to the Mail, and they're combining the stories of the heat wave and also the impending strikes at Gatwick, which is also going to cause people lots of problems over the summer months. Zoe.
This sort of bugs me about the Daily Mail, I have to say, and I don't mean this in a partisan way. Obviously, I'm from a paper of a different political persuasion, but this is a completely neutral observation. They do periodically roll together a number of negative events which completely free them from having any editorial stance on those events, right? So the Daily Mail is typically very, very anti-strikes, refuses to even engage with the idea that strikes might have a legitimate basis in pay and conditions. They're very, very sceptical about climate change. They tend to refuse to even engage with the idea that the climate may be changing as a result of human activity. But they won't, obviously, when those things come to crisis, they have to notice because they're still a newspaper. So they write these kind of flapping headlines. Oh, chaos. It's going to be way too hot. Gatwick is going to be disrupted. Even if you escape the Gatwick disruption on the way out, you're not going to escape it on the way back in. This is all in chaos. But because they absolutely refute the kind of systemic problems underneath those situations, it just sounds like they sound like Chicken Licken, you know. They sound like they're just running around announcing disaster. And that does annoy me, I have to admit.
Mary, do you see anything in that analysis that you agree with, that the Mail aren't engaging in the reasons behind the strike and are just, doomsaying?
Well, it's whether you look at the angle from heat or strikes, there's important things underneath it, isn't it? And with strikes, it's about, are people getting paid a fair salary? What are the wages that they're on? What are the conditions that they get and the benefits that they get? And it's important employers look at what they're doing and make sure they're the best possible place to work. So, and then it's what naturally can be afforded in whichever sort of industry you're in, but you want to treat all your staff fairly. That should be the going in position. But when it's putting it alongside also, with the heat aspect and sort of climate change, and Zoe mentioned, it's literally, the temperatures across the whole world are, it's a whole direct consequence of climate change. What else is it? So it's really important that everyone engages with that and comes up with really innovative ways to address it. And we do that on a daily basis. And I do it with businesses all the time and helping them reach net zero earlier and trying to get them to get to 2040 and 10 years earlier. And before that's 10 years before the government goal. But yeah, it's important that we all engage in this debate, because it's not going to be done by one person doing something. We all collectively and individually need to do so much to drive better outcomes and get us to that sort of just transition and get climate action happening.
Zoe, the Times going into a bit more depth and detail about the strikes, and they speak to the unions, and we've got the Unite Union being quoted as saying inevitably disruption will be caused to flights, but it's a more in-depth piece.
I feel like the Times is sort of, I know this would be a ridiculous thing for a newspaper to try and do, but I feel like they're trying to prepare the ground for some peace to be reached before that date of the 29th of July. The dates that are proposed for these strikes are absolutely peak going away for some holidays. And if you think about how that juxtaposes against the cost of living crisis, if you had your holiday that you probably could only just afford, like completely ruined by airport chaos, that would be socially quite disruptive. And I feel like, I mean, I might be wrong, but I think a year ago, the Times wouldn't have even engaged with the union point of view. I feel like they're engaging with the union point of view in order to broker some kind of communication between the unions and the bosses, because it would be a crying shame if those strikes went ahead, the summer was ruined for tens, even hundreds of thousands of people, and they came to an agreement later anyway. That would be a real crying shame.
The Times are reporting that talks over pay are due to resume next week, and they've got this rather helpful Q&A section about obviously lots of people who'll be wondering if their summer holidays will be ruined and how exactly they'll be affected, Mary.
Yeah, and I'm away next week. I'm going from Heathrow, but there's often a repercussion on some of these things, and certainly if there's whether it's different countries in Europe that are more affected by this, and I really hope Gatwick therefore can resolve it, because it ends up being innocent people, families, often young ones as well, having to either have really disappointed from their holidays or having to wait long time and hours in an airport, which isn't conducive to family life, frankly. So I really hope they can resolve this. This is supposed to be a positive time of year for families can get together, friends, and just get away and have some proper family time. And so it's a real shame that this is happening right now, and I guess is why they're doing it just right at those sort of summer holidays that are important. So yes, if they can sit down and go through and really sort something out, would be a huge incentive to people stop worrying about it as well, because they're just going to worry about it over the next few weeks as they approach their summer holidays and are worried about the disruption that might happen because of this.
Zoe, we've just got about a minute to talk about this Just Stop Oil story. Front of the Express reportedly planning massive protest on Monday to paralyse London.
Well, I was quite interested in the Express's juxtaposition, right? Because they're the only paper that didn't lead on the weather chaos. So you've got basically the whole suite of the British and international media leading on a heat wave, which is making our normal way of life completely untenable. You know, you can't go on holiday, you can't go to the Acropolis, you can't have a train strike in Italy because people are fainting on the platforms. You know, all the things we used to take for granted about living normally are being capsized by the temperatures on mainland Europe. And then the Express goes proper hysterical about the disruption of Just Stop Oil. And I think they've misread the mood. I think there are times on a kind of grey September day when they might be able to get away with railing against climate change activists. But when you can see the effects all around you and the Express is going, put Just Stop Oil in prison, you know, use your new powers, they look ridiculous.